So good evening, everyone. This is our last of the series for the Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and then we have a doctor in the house who will be talking with us about sickle cell, all the questions that we have received so far from the poll we did online. I'll be asking him, and then he will be responding after his talk. And I am very hopeful that you would have value for your time. I know that this is going to be a very impactful. Good evening, Madam Joy. It's so good to see you joining all the way from the UK. So it's going to be a very impactful evening. So you give me a moment to read the biography of our guest speaker. I have it here. Dr. Oluwabamise Omolaso is a licensed medical practitioner and enthusiast, AI enthusiast, please, entrepreneur, and dedicated advocate for digital skills development among young people. He is passionately committed to serving humanity and actively participates in initiatives that promote health equity, advance healthcare, and empower the next generation. As an active member of the Pouring Out Health Equity Initiative and Pro Health Spring, Dr. Omolaso engages in regular health outreaches to undeserved communities, providing essential medical services, education, and resources. Through these efforts, he strives to bridge the healthcare gap and improve access to quality health care for those in need. By actively participating in health outreaches, Dr. Omolaso demonstrates his commitment to making a tangible difference in the lives of undeserved individuals and communities. In addition to his medical expertise, Dr. Omolaso is a strong advocate for digital skills development. Suffice to say, he's a tech bro, particularly among young people. He recognizes the transformative power of technology and believes in equipping the younger generation with the necessary tools to thrive in the digital age. So through the various platforms that he engages, he actively promotes acquisition of digital skills, encouraging young individuals to embrace tech and leverage it for personal and professional growth. Dr. Omolaso's commitment to empowering young people also extends beyond advocacy. So he participates in mentoring programs, workshops, seminars, where he shares knowledge and experiences to inspire and guide aspiring professionals. So through his combined expertise in healthcare, AI, entrepreneurship, and digital skills advocacy, Dr. Oluwabamise serves to inspire positive change and drive impact. His dedication to humanity, serving, promoting health equity, and empowering young people positions him as a valuable asset in shaping a brighter future for individuals and communities alike. So without any further ado, please let's help me make welcome Dr. Omolaso Oluwabamise. I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. So Bamise, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much.
So good to have you. Thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the privilege and the opportunity to be doing this. I mean, something I was also like looking forward to as well. And I hope that this session will be, valuable, and then we'll be able to draw on, relevant insights about what the condition is all about. So I don't know if my screen is visible. Can you see my screen, please? And can you?
Yes, sir, we can see. We can see it.
All right. So we'll be talking on sickle cell anemia, okay? And this is the outline that we'll be going through. So sickle cell anemia is an inherited blood disorder where there's a change in the shape and function of red blood cells. So a normal red blood cell you expect to be, has a particular kind of shape. It's biconcave, it's normally, round, biconcave in nature, and then flexible, and can move through the body vessels, carrying oxygen to different parts of the body. But what we find in sickle cell anemia is that the red blood cells take a different shape, like a sickle shape, and due to several factors, okay, that result from the particular type of trait it is, that is the S, okay, in the genotype. So And this makes the sickle cells there, they become stiff, and then makes it difficult for them to move through the blood vessels. So the primary thing is that you want to be able to transport oxygen and nutrients to different parts of the body. So if these cells are unable to move around, then there'll be a problem. It's like let's say in a country now, there's probably war going on maybe in the west or in the east or something, and then your soldiers are trapped in the north or something like that. So they are unable to move across, and then before you get there, things might have gone the way you don't want them to be. So this is just a pictorial representation of a normal red blood cell and then how a sickle cell will appear. So the abnormal shape of red blood cells, like I said, makes them sticky and also makes them prone to getting stuck in blood vessels. So ideally, red blood cells should have a lifespan of 120 days. But you see, the problem with these sickle cells is that they have a lifespan of about just 10 to 20 days. So what you are expecting that, the red blood cells should, at least live this long. So that high rate of, destruction of those cells is also a potential challenge to the body, because the body is unable to keep up. The bone marrow has to start producing a lot of cells, and then all of this leads to the certain features that we see about sickle cell, which we'll discuss in more details later. So this is just what I'm trying to discuss here. So we can see the biconcave normal red blood cells at the upper part, and then at the lower section we can see the sickle cells. And then another thing about the sickle cells is that the S gene, the S trait that is present in the genotype, also has this high affinity for the vascular, we call it the vascular endothelium, like the wall of the vessel, as you can see it here. So they tend to stick a lot more to these cells. So now we talked about the genetics of sickle cell anemia. So it's a common genetic problem with enormous challenges, and we talk about what this genetic mutation leads to. So usually, when we talk of genotype, we have the AA, we have AS, we have SS, and like that. So what happens is that the normal AA gene, or let's say the hemoglobin A gene, okay, there is a mutation that goes on, in a single point mutation, and then that mutation causes a change in the it leads to a DNA mutation, and that DNA mutation causes that A gene to become an S gene, okay, and that is where the problem starts from. So usually we have two categories of people. One set, we call them carriers, okay, and then that a carrier is someone that just has one copy of the S gene. But someone who has two copies of the S gene, in a state where we call an homozygous trait, that has two copies of it, would manifest the symptoms of sickle cell. And sometimes there are different forms of mutation, not just the one that leads to S. There are other forms of mutation that lead to C traits, that leads to a form of thalassemia, and all of these, when combined with an S gene, okay, would lead to the symptoms of sickle cell. And sometimes, usually, SS is the most severe form. When you find SC, S with a beta thalassemia, is usually not as severe as the full-blown SS. So I just talked about this. So when we talk about how the Mendelian pattern of inheritance goes, usually a lot of people make the mistake of thinking, if I'm AS and I marry a fellow AS, we are going to have 4 children, right? And one of them will be AA, 2 will be AS, and the last one will be SS. But that is an erroneous form of thinking about that situation. The reality is that for each pregnancy, that is on each child, these are the chances that can occur. Okay, so the first child has the chance of either being an AAAS or SS. Okay, so it's on each pregnancy. It's not that, we are going to have 4 children or something. So we need to correct that. And it's a very common misconception that happens in the general public. But once you just see the chart, they say, okay, that means it's only one SS I can have. No, it doesn't happen that way. There are families that first born, second born, third born are SS, and these things are not no one can fully determine and say, it is the A that I will get, or it's the S I will get, or something like that. So please, these are very important information for us to take note of. So how can someone get sickle cell anemia? It's said it's an heritable disease, so you can only get it from your parents, both parents who are carriers of the sickle cell gene, or probably they are also if, let's say, both parents are also have both copies of the gene, let's say an SS marry SS, of course, we will not expect that kind of situation to happen, or SS marry SC or something like that, or AS marry AS, AC marry AC, or something like that. So we have situations where anyone who is a carrier of the sickle cell gene, okay, can pass it on to their offspring. Now, it is not contagious, it's not spread by contact or anything. So it's simply by genetics and inheritance. So sickle cell is of a very serious global burden. About 300,000 babies are born with sickle cell yearly, and it's with majority in sub-Saharan Africa. So sickle cell primarily from studies, research, we are seeing that it's most commonly a disease that affects Black people, okay? And usually why it's more common around the sub-Saharan Africa is because the S gene, if it's just a single copy, like someone who is AS, is able to combat malaria better than somebody who is AA or someone who is SS. The reason is the S gene is for someone who is AS. From research, it's found that about 60% is the A part and then 40% is the S part. Now that S part, when they, for instance, when they come down with malaria, let's say in form of falciparum malaria or something, those sickle cells break down earlier. Okay, so the malaria is unable to stay for long in their body, and then they are able to combat it better. But for someone who now has both copies of the SS, the reverse is the case, okay, because now they are facing other issues. The body is not getting enough oxygen, their cells are breaking down, they are predisposed to infections and all of those complications that may arise. So it's a common cause of death in both adults and pediatric populations, especially pediatric populations. While I can recall during my undergraduate studies, during my medical rotations, I remember seeing bringing children who are paper white. I mean, when a child is paper white, you're almost saying that child is probably brought in dead if there is no urgent intervention at that point in time, getting blood on time, giving oxygen and all those kind of things. So most parents, especially the ones who are not trained or to know about it, especially if, for instance, if I say in a Yoruba setting now, they will think, oh, it's probably like a myth, or the child is, they give them some term called abiku or something like that. And then like, oh, maybe this child is not ready to stay. And some of them are unable to identify what it is, or probably they spend time with, local herbs or using, maybe they meet herbalists or something like that. And then they are unable to identify these things early on. And before you know it, these children come down with severe illnesses because of what they are predisposed to by virtue of the condition. So this is just like a global representation of the distribution of sickle cell. So what are the common symptoms that they usually have? Because their cells are rapidly breaking down, when you check their packed cell volume, okay, it's usually very low. Okay, so they will have anemia. Okay, and when the blood count is low, blood level is low, the body is unable to get enough nutrients, oxygen, they'll be tired, they will experience fatigue. Then they also have pain crisis, especially joint pain, serious bone pains. Why? Because the cells that are getting blocked, in the body, that are, there's a form of what we call an occlusion, okay, in the blood flow. So these cells are unable to get adequate, these cells are, the body tissues are unable to get adequate nourishment, oxygen, and then, the cells begin to die, and then they experience serious pain from it. There can be shortness of breath. The condition also affects the lungs, especially in the early stage during their growing phases. And even in the adult phases, they have the condition that we call the acute chest syndrome. When someone's blood level is low, they of course experience dizziness. You usually find that their eyes are, this white part of their eyes has a sort of yellowish discoloration, which we call jaundice. In children, they experience delayed growth and development, and they have increased susceptibility to infections. So you want to ensure that someone who has a sickle cell trait, is on regular antibiotics, it has adequate vaccination, because you want to help them and protect them from many of these infections that can easily bring them down. And then they often have leg ulcers because of delayed wound healing. And then some of them might have protruding abdomen because, there's what we call hepatomegaly. Their livers getting bigger, their spleen getting bigger because of the spleen trying to, many of these cells, they get trapped in their spleen, and then they're trying to fight these infections, and from that process, they start growing bigger. And, in some advanced cases, there's what we call an autosplenectomy, but we don't want to go into too much information. So one of the first symptoms, especially in children, is a painful hands and swelling of the feet that usually occur after 6 months. So usually in the first 6 months,
Sorry.
one of the first symptoms that we see in children is what we call dactylitis, painful hands and swelling of their feet. And then we have the sickle cell peshi. Most times you see there's a frontal bursting of their forehead. They have very long extremities. Okay, because the bone marrow where blood is being where these red blood cells are being produced and circulate and sent around the body, is trying to do a lot of work to compensate for the cells that are rapidly dying, and then these bones start getting thinner and thinner and thinner because of the work they're having to do. Okay, so they usually have these very long extremities that you might find, and then there are several complications that may arise. Sickle cell can affect any part of the body, can affect various parts of the body, just from its increased susceptibility to infections, can lead to eye damage, retinal damage. There can be multiple organ failure. The spleen can be affected, the kidneys can be affected, the heart can be affected. They are prone to leg ulcers, bone damage. Prone to bone infections, and also serious pain, serious joint pains, bone pains that may also arise. So you want to wonder, so what are the things that, okay, someone has a sickle cell, you've heard of certain statements like, oh, he has a crisis, or the person has a sickle cell crisis. There are different forms of sickle cell crisis. Okay, sometimes they'll say there's a form of crisis that we call a vaso-occlusive crisis. There's a form that we call the hemolytic crisis. So all of these have different ways that they, manifest clinically. So certain things we always advise anyone who has sickle cell is to avoid dehydration. Okay, dehydration from, so they need to take a lot of water. A lot of water is very, very, very key. Hydration therapy is a very key thing when it comes to management of sickle cell. Infections, you want to give them prophylactic antibiotics for malaria, for general infections. You want to make sure as much as possible you should avoid trauma, injuries, or anything like that, because that they have a very peculiar form of wound healing, which is not as as you would expect for someone who has like an AA or AS, or someone who doesn't have a sickle cell trait or something like that. Then avoid extreme fatigue, extremes of temperature. They want them to be in a place that is too cold or that is too hot. All of those conditions can affect the body, the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood, and other conditions that can also induce extra stress on the body, like pregnancy. It's not that sickle cell people or women who have the sickle cell condition cannot get pregnant. Of course, they can get pregnant, but we categorize them under what we call an high-risk pregnancy. So they need a high index of suspicion. You need to monitor them more closely. They have more frequent visits in their antenatal care. So all of these things can be managed appropriately. But then there are things that can also be looked out for the causes and then the triggers of crisis. We've talked about the complications that may also arise. So how to know someone has, or how to make a diagnosis of sickle cell anemia? So usually in utero, okay, when the baby is still in, the fetus is still in the mother, they can do tests such as the chorionic villus sampling, amniocentesis. They'll take samples from the fetus, and then they'll be able to do some form of genetic testing to to find out, okay, what's the does this child have a growing change, baby has a sickle cell trait or not. Then older people, they can have a diagnosis of sickle cell anemia by doing an hemoglobin electrophoresis that will identify the type of hemoglobin that they have. Do full blood counts, and full blood counts definitely. If you are seeing a picture of a consistent low PCV, there's what we call the steady state PCV. So you want them to know what their steady state PCV is and things like that. Then how would you manage, or how sickle cell anemia is generally managed? So the first thing when it comes to practice, we talk about the pharmacologic and non-pharmacologic treatments. So the non-pharmacologic treatment starts with lifestyle modification, avoiding triggers, the preventive measures that needs to be taken. Okay, so avoid all of those things we talked about that are triggers, adequate fluid intake, then other things to ensure regular clinic attendance, daily folic acid intake, because it helps in the production of the biochemistry and the production of red blood cells. Antibiotic prophylaxis, pneumococcal vaccine. In this case, of course, because of their predisposition to infections, especially lung infections, when they are growing up, they can have some form of acute chest syndrome. They are predisposed to what we call some encapsulated microorganisms that can actually lead to or predispose these that can actually predispose them to infections, especially like the Streptococcus pneumoniae that can lead to serious conditions for them, serious respiratory conditions. Okay, so they also need to check their PCB regularly and know what their that's their packed cell volume, and know what their steady state is, because it also helps whenever they come down with a crisis or something. You can understand, oh, okay, is this person within the steady state? How many pints of blood do we need to transfuse this person with? You know, so other specific treatments, especially when there's a case of hospitalization or hospital admission, you want to carry out some form of intravenous hydration, administer analgesics for pain. Oxygen therapy is very necessary. Antibiotics can either be prophylactics, okay, blood transfusion if indicated, then anti-sickle agents, which have been like hydroxyurea, which functions by trying to induce what we call a fetal hemoglobin in their body, because it's able to provide it's able to like combat the effects of the sickling of those red cells. Appropriate surgery when needed in such cases, which of course, if someone has like an extreme form of ulcer that is not healing, or probably a co-infection or a comorbidity with something else, you know, you want to make sure that this person gets appropriate treatment. And other methods of treatment, of course, I would not really tag them as new methods of treatment, but it's something that's already, you know, already in practice. Some form of bone marrow transplantations, you know, stem cell transplantation, and other things that are being queried right now are, you know, genetic therapy. Is it possible to undo that mutation that has occurred and, you know, change the S back to A? You know, and all of those things are still in undergoing research. So sickle cell anemia affects quality of life due to following reasons: unpredictable nature of pain. If you know someone, or you're living with someone who has, you know, you just wonder, why is this person always getting sick or always getting admitted or something like that? You know, usually comes with a lot of challenges. You know, even no one likes to, you know, visit the hospital regularly or something like that. You know, when there's an health issue, it has this mental health effect, economic burden, financial burden, not to even talk of being in a, you know, a country like, or a developing country like Nigeria, you know, or something like that, because it has enormous effects. So what can we do? How can we help these people? You know, providing support groups, you know, adequate counseling. Sometimes some of them, you know, because of the pain that they go through, they might, you know, go very extreme and have some form of drug or drug addiction, because they are trying to help the pain, or they are trying to, you know, so they need adequate counseling, you know, support groups. They need to understand that, they need to understand the kind of condition that they have, and not probably live in denial. You know, understand what their limits are. Okay, it doesn't stop you from still, you know, following your dreams, following your passion. It's just that, you know, that whenever, you know, you are getting to a certain limit, you are getting too stressed, you are getting too fatigued, it's time to unplug. Okay, you unplug, you get better, and then you refire. Other things, like I appreciate what Dr. Grace is doing with our community, such as advocacy and awareness, letting people know about this condition, okay, and also letting people know how they can prevent, especially from the point of wanting to make your life partner decisions. So being aware of the condition, listen to those who have the condition, and also regularly visit to your doctors. Donate blood, very, very important. You know, sometimes people say, I can't donate my blood, though, it's not enough, it's not this, it's not that. Taking one pint, of course, before you donate blood, they will first of all check you, and they will tell you whether you are fit to donate or not. So you can just go for the check, and if you are fit to donate, you can donate. You know, you need to also help and save a life. Everyone needs to know their genotype. I mean, for a very long time, for me, not my genotype in this case, but my blood group, I thought it was O positive, and then I found out it was A positive later, when I was, you know, carrying out tests in the lab myself during one of our undergraduate rotations. And then, of course, I confirmed later on at the hospital. So many people might also think, oh, I'm AA, and then later on discover they are AS, and then they're already probably engaged to somebody who is AS, and then it now becomes a serious issue whether or not to move on or to stop or something like that. So it's very, very key. Your blood group, your genotype are two things that you don't want to joke with. And avoid marriage. You can either be married, you know, or avoid pregnancy with someone who has a similar genotype if you know you're a carrier, because you don't want someone to be living with pain this way all their life. And the genetic counseling is important. Some people try to say, oh, things like, oh, I know something that can be done, maybe either through IVF or through is it prenatal diagnosis now. And when they discover that the child has probably SS, they will terminate the pregnancy. I mean, how many pregnancies do you want to terminate? Again, that is even illegal in our country. So you want to ensure that you avoid all of those things and prepare yourself ahead. Okay. Someone who has the condition, of course, needs to identify and know what the triggers are and avoid those triggers. So genotype compatibility is very, very key. These are like different examples. AA can marry. Of course, anyone who has just a single the genotype that can marry any other is just the AA. Okay, of course, anyone who has the traits, you don't want that person to marry another person who has the traits, okay, or who is the carrier of the sickle cell traits. So, in conclusion, sickle cell disease is common in our climate, has multiple negative effects inherited for parents and from parents that are carriers of the sickle cell gene, as explained, and best ways to prevent is to avoid marriage or pregnancy between carriers. There's no let me say, I've read of a curative, or not fully a curative cure, but let's say a curative cure, such as the stem cell transplantation, especially when it's done in children at an early age, is able to actually give them a sort of cure for the condition. When they do a bone marrow stem cell transplantation, then that really helps. But other forms of therapies, are not entirely curative, but then they also try to provide some form of care for the patient and try to prolong their life and also help them in managing the condition effectively. So thank you very much for listening. I believe the floor is open for questions for anyone who might have questions.
Oh, wow. That was so concise, so perfect, so educative. Thank you so much, Doc, for talking, in the language that everybody would understand, whether you're medical or you're not. So we gathered a handful of questions before now to do a Q&A with you after your talk. So we'll take that. And then in the meantime, you that you are live, if you have questions, just raise a hand and then you can unmute and ask, or you just type the questions on the platform. I will answer you just in a few minutes before Dr. Bamise gets busy again. Now that he has our time, please let's maximize it.
I've actually had 2 meetings for this meeting.
I know. So I wanted you to please again speak to what you already talked about, and that's because there's this thing that is now beginning to spread where people are like, when they are now AS and AS, they could meet a genetic counselor, and then there's something that can be done for them now. I know, of course, there are things to be done. And then you mentioned that, yes, they will do a prenatal screening. And in the prenatal screening, if they find that the genotype of the child is SS, you are left with the option of terminating the pregnancy. And then in the long-term effect, how are you going to keep up? So I need you to please, I know you said it too, but just so that, when you say two things twice, it sticks. So that patients will not be tempted to say, no, it's not like those days where AS will marry AS and everything. In this our climate, is prenatal screening available? At what cost is it available? And then the option of terminating pregnancies, how many should? So please, I need you to just speak to it again, emphatically.
So when it comes to prenatal screening, usually for genetic counseling for couples, usually I will start from the preventive side. Usually for people who are just coming up, young people these days, I believe that there was this thing they did, and I can't remember the country right now, about trying to control road traffic accidents. This initiative started taking pictures of road traffic accidents, and then they were pasting it all around. So when people were going around, they are seeing pictures of road traffic accidents. It keeps reminding that, if I overspeed or if I don't take note of proper traffic, conditions and all those kind of things, obey traffic rules and all, this can be me or something like that. So that's constant remembrance. So I believe that if people, especially these young people, if they actually get to see how serious these people who have this condition actually, how serious the condition is, I think it will actually help the kind of decisions that they are going to make. And that's where it starts from. So if you know that, you are with someone and then the person is AS, the best thing you can do for your offspring, your children, your generation is just to avoid that marriage. But then some still go ahead and say, okay, let's look for other options. What can we do? can we check for whether this child has the particular gene, or whether the child does not have this particular gene or has the trait or not, and then let us try to see what we can do. So in such situations, especially in our country, Nigeria, as I know, is abortion is illegal, and it's not something you want to let's say engage in. But some will try to say, okay, let's try an IVF approach, and let's try to see whether we can check check before we do the transplantation into the woman or the surrogate, as the case may be, and then see whether or not we can terminate or not. So all of these things, especially if you consider the financial burden that comes with it, cost of what will be the cost of IVF, what will be the cost of this test. Cost of IVF in the country, I think, is nothing less than 2 million or 2 to 3 million thereabouts. So how many of these do you want to do? It's like, are you trying to play God? That's the question. So in this kind of situation, it's just that by identifying that this condition is a very serious one, and it's one that you don't want to get yourself entrapped into, because it's a lifelong thing, and the child really is not going to be happy about what they are facing. Of course, they can live through it. I mean, certain terminologies have come up from it, like live through the pain, you can still achieve your dreams and all. Yes, you can, but then the challenges that comes with it, the mental health effects, the depressive episodes, the economic burdens, the constant sicknesses that also can occur, all of these things that you want to have at the back of your mind, and make sure that you don't make that mistake, especially for the sake of those who will be your offspring and then will be living through these effects. I hope that's able to address this your questions.
Yes. Yes, it did. Thank you very much. Okay, so I also noticed that in our country, Nigeria, early diagnosis has become a problem. Please, apologies to the abroad people here, but it's because Nigeria has the highest burden, and so we're trying to bring it home to Nigeria. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that early diagnosis has always been a very big issue, and I'm yet to hear that one that said he was diagnosed with sickle cell early in life. They always tell you they were in university, or they were late in secondary school, or they just found out they keep falling sick, and after treatment of malaria has failed constantly, doctor now say, maybe we should go and check. Some even to the point of when they are close to marriage, that they will now have to know their genotype. So from your medical perspective and clinical experience, what do you think we can do to help with early diagnosis being a very big issue regarding diagnosing sickle cell and further management of it?
Okay, thank you for your question. And I believe we're already doing it right now. I mean, it starts from the phase of awareness, letting people know what this condition is all about. Okay, and then stemming from awareness, every other thing can now come into it. Understanding what the condition is, how to identify, the conditions as well. I'm not sure of our national health policy, but I know in US, for instance, it's mandatory that you do that test at delivery. You do the genetic testing for the fetus and for the baby at delivery. So you want to know what that baby's genotype is. So if such things can also be incorporated into our system, the way we mandate that we do vaccinations, at birth, there's a vaccination program. Of course, we can also have a program where we want to make sure that certain tests are done early, and the parents are able to identify and know what's going on time. Now, another thing is that sickle cell, when a child is born, there's what we call the fetal hemoglobin, HbF. That fetal hemoglobin it has very strong affinity for oxygen. Okay, so even though the symptoms of sickle cell trait might have started showing, it doesn't become really apparent until 6 months of life. So sometimes many of them they don't really pay attention to it, and sometimes they just neglect it, and then before you know, they say, oh, it's just, and of course the baby cannot talk, baby can't say anything. So many of them interpret it as, oh, it's teething, or the baby is, they just try to give different explanations for it until a trained health worker will be able to look at, this your baby is having this condition, or they'll see this dactylitis, the hand and foot syndrome, the swelling of the hands and feet. They'll always have conditions where the baby will most likely have probably like some form of respiratory infections. That's like things that they can also look out for. But one of the most pertinent approaches is if the government can provide some sort of program where at every delivery we want to make sure we identify what this baby's genotype is. And I believe that would be like a very, very good approach in handling the situation.
Wow, that's very great. So the government's role is very vital in all these fights that we're fighting against sickle cell. So,
Yeah.
Doc, I'll still ask one more question. I'm paraphrasing most of the questions that I received so that we can just add more than one at once. Now, if apart from your years of clinical practice, now apart from the few from the drugs that you give to your patients who come down with crisis and all, what other thing would you prescribe, like lifestyle adjustments, and that we better help them in their coping mechanism living with sickle cell?
So in the course of my slide, I talked about triggers. Okay. So one of them is dehydration. Okay. And what dehydration does to your body is it's when the cells do not get enough, it tips the pH of the body into a state of acidosis. Okay. And this acidotic state worsens the oxygen carrying capacity of the red blood cells and is unable to actually transport oxygen and then nutrients to different parts of the body. So one thing that we want to make sure is that this person gets adequate hydration. We advise that they take at least 3 liters of water every day, and they also try to avoid soda. Okay, all these Coke, Fanta, and things like that. The reason is those things have a high concentration of glucose, of sugar. Okay, and when they take this glucose and when they take this Coke, Fanta, and whatever into their bodies, that high concentration, causes like there is a pool of water, okay, from the bloodstream into a form of let's say an osmotic effect. Okay, that's what it's called, and then it worsens their dehydration, or it worsens the dehydration that they are experiencing. So one thing you want to make sure is that someone who has this condition, you want to tell them that, oh, you need to avoid certain things like this, avoid soda, avoid extremes of conditions, extreme cold, extreme heat. You also do not stress themselves too much. Extreme fatigue and all of those things are very, very important things to look out for, which can help their condition and prevent them from coming down regularly with illnesses. Some people say, I know this person is sickle cell, and I know this other one is also sickle cell. This one always have crisis more than that one. If you investigate properly, you will find out that probably the one who has less crisis understands these triggers and is able to efficiently avoid them. When you know that the weather is cold, you quickly get a blanket for yourself, or you know that I'm not supposed to take soda or something. Like, if at all, like at most, it should not be like their regular or daily routine. Because sometimes people say, let me just have fun once in a while or something like that. But of course, they need to ensure that they take water adequately. It helps their body, it helps their kidneys, and then staying hydrated also helps them a lot. Thank you.
Wow, awesome. So I think part of why it looks as though the myth where people say that once you've crossed the age of 21, that you're not going to die again or something. I used to hear those myths then, and I'm like, oh, really? So I feel that as you live with sickle cell longer, you get to know the triggers, and then you become more cautious. So that's why it looks like as they grow, the number of crises for someone that's more careful reduces. But what do you have to say, at least to general people that think that once there is an age, that once you cross that age, then you are just done with sickle cell forever?
In such situations, there's no specific age that when you cross, that I would never experience the symptoms, or I would never, it's a trait, okay? Person has SS, or the person has SC, or the person has S and the beta thalassemia. Okay, it's a trait. That's like their body condition already. It's always going to be there. So what can improve over time is probably the care that they are getting. Okay, for someone who is getting enough care, and is able to identify triggers, presents on time for, for care. Probably whenever they have crisis, you go to the hospital on time. You're not trying to like take care of yourself at home or do something else. All of those things are things that help them, okay, as they grow older. So there's no like specific cutoff that once you cross 21 or you cross 30 or you cross 40, nothing is going to happen again. We just hope and pray, of course, in addition to our treatments, that the patients themselves would also take note of their condition, okay, understand what they can do, and also be aware of how to take care of themselves as well, which is very, very key to their treatment. Because many times some of them don't even understand what to do when they are experiencing certain symptoms. They just think, oh, let me just be taking any drug or just doing anything. No, it doesn't work that way. Other things that can also come into play, of course, avoiding things like alcohol, smoking. Of course, those ones already have like their body on, on the health, not to talk about someone who has this particular kind of condition. So there's no specific age limit. It's a trait that's already there. So all that they need to do is just ensure that they manage themselves properly, present on time to clinic whenever there is a form of crisis. And I believe that helps.
Yes, powerful. So, Doug, you still have a few minutes because there are two more questions that we need to ask you.
Okay, I think we can shoot for it.
Okay, thank you very much. So, BMT, bone marrow transplantation, you mentioned that as the treatment alternatives, treatment options that we have. And good news that LUTH is going to open LUTH, Lagos University Teaching Hospital, for those who don't know, is going to open their bone marrow transplantation center, the first of its kind in Nigeria. So we can say glory to God that we have BMT center. So, but here is the question this person is asking. Assuming we have the center working, assuming the patient has the money to afford it, is BMT an absolute cure for sickle cell?
So stem cell transplantation, bone marrow transplantation can be, of course, a form of cure for this condition. But the problem that comes with transplants generally, either you do someone does a liver transplant, a kidney transplant. The problem that comes with the transplant is the associated, the host compatibility. Of course, you would expect that they'll do all of those testing before they carry out the transplantation. But sometimes, even in such cases, they can have conditions that can lead to like a graft versus host disease, whereby their body is rejecting that transplant. Of course, it will not occur in all situations, but it's a condition that needs to be looked out for. Okay, of course, it can be a cure. That's bone marrow transplantation, but then it also has its own risks. And then whenever we want to do any form of treatment, even from drug research or something like that, there's something we always do, which is a risk-benefit analysis. Okay, and then, of course, it's be explained to the patient or the guardians or the parents, as the case may be, that this is what it is and these are the likely complications. Are you ready to go ahead? Are you ready to go forward with it and things like that? Of course, they'll try to apply best practices to make sure that they do the best for the patient. But then you never can tell how the body is going to respond to the transplant. Okay, and I don't say if done well. Of course, I believe it should be done well in any part of the world, in any of course, you should have like the best care available. So bone marrow transplantation, of course, is a cure. But again, as I said, it also has its own significant risks that come with it.
Wow, and these significant risks are really, really a lot. So it's not something that you should really plan your entire life around. So the last question here for tonight, and I thank you so much for your indulgence, is okay, I will use the story first because I got a message from a sickle cell advocate in the UK who messaged me because some of her benefactors now, the people benefiting from her advocacy in Nigeria sent her this billboard, "We cure sickle cell." And I'm sure if you have to use the road to travel in Nigeria, you must have seen that billboard at strategic places written, "We cure sickle cell." And so she reached out to me that do I know anything about the person and whoever it was? We traced, we found that, oh, they are in Enugu, they are like we use herbal and all of this kind of alternative medicine to cure. And they claim that they've cured close to so many persons, giving us pictorial everything. Now, we tried to push in to see, and then eventually we could not recommend them. And this is the bane of medical science, right? And so many persons, society, they are feeling like the medical guys are the ones against them getting treatment because they don't believe in herbal, they don't believe in traditional parts of medicine, which is something they have used many lifetimes ago. So you already can figure what my question is, or what the question we received is, that
Okay.
how about using herbal medicine like the traditional ones to cure sickle cell? Do you believe in it? And then why are doctors not promoting the use of this, herbal medicine to treat?
So, medical therapy is what we call evidence-based therapy. You want to be able to say this thing, if it works in US, can we go and do it in Nigeria? It should work. Can we go and do it we are carrying out researches and making sure that, this research is evidence-based. We are not using it on how do I put it now? On a work for this person, why should you not work for that person or something like that? So you want to ensure that whatever therapy that you are incorporating into your practice has to be evidence-based, has to be research-based, and which is very, 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 very key. How we have come so far in medicine, in drug development generally, in research and all, is because we have been able to identify specifically that, this is what is on ground. Okay. So all of those people that they say they've treated, okay, can we, carry out hemoglobin electrophoresis on them and find out, has the traits changed? Have they found out a way to, carry a form of, genetic therapy, or maybe they are changing, they have their own way of changing the mutation of the body, or changing the traits from S back to A. Are they, what's their process? How are they able to do these things? Can we scientifically prove what they are doing? And that's where the primary challenge is. Of course, I talked about using even different types of herbs, okay? Like, if we use date palm, or we use pumpkin leaf, that's ugu, or we use all of this, that they can increase blood levels. But in all of this, there has still not been any concrete evidence, as regards the effectiveness. Of course, you would expect that, yes, if you take vegetables, you take fruits regularly, is going to help your body and your tissue development as well, by providing you necessary vitamins, essential vitamins, that will help the body's growth and development. But it's still not like an absolute, treatment that we can say that, this, if we do this, we try it in a different country, in a different study group, we are going to have consistent results. They are going to be fully cured from sickle cell. And in most cases, it's not like that. And, because of the desperation that comes with the condition, they are ready to do anything. And then, I've spent so much, in hospitals, we've done blood transfusions, we've done this and that. So people are like, I'm ready to do anything. Please just take me anywhere. And that's why they're really, really ready to, just go anywhere. And it's actually a serious challenge when it comes to medical practice, especially in our country, like in Nigeria, for instance, because these people would have gone to try a lot of things, and then by the time they're now coming to the hospital for,
It's
actual
near
care,
death situation.
yeah, exactly. And then that's where the major issues, and then they now say, it's the doctors.
I feel it's the doctor that was not competent.
Yeah, so
I understand.
that's the problem that we have. And then we just hope that with enough awareness, advocacy like this, and governmental input as well, we'll be able to actually find a way to help the situation, and also increase awareness as well, and also mitigate the condition generally, helping people make the right decisions, especially when it comes to marriage or getting pregnant or whatever as the case may be. So thank you very
Wow.
much.
I've had the most exciting moment having this conversation with you. Thank you so much,
Very
Dr.
appreciate you.
Bamishe. I mean, I'm going to, in the presence of everybody, beg you that I need to have a Facebook Live with you where we chat about this thing, so that every other person that did not join this Zoom, apart from
Okay.
seeing the recording, because I know people are lazy, they may not even go and follow the recording, but if it's also a live
Like,
video after now, maybe
yeah.
another weekend that you have time to just chat about it. So please, could you just give us your final words as we end the meeting?
All right. So I would just like to say that I understand it's it's a very serious condition. It's even something that comes quite very close to home, and I've had situations where we had to, do so much to help. So what is very key is providing support, especially to those who have the condition, providing adequate support to them. Sometimes it might
stop stigmatization.
I stop stigmatization. Sometimes they'll feel like, oh, is it only you? All those kind of statements, it doesn't help at all. It's just by understanding and also, should I say, sympathize or empathizing with them, as the case may be, so that they will know that they are not alone, okay? And they always have a friend, they have a community that they can always reach out to, and always ensuring that they it's not like you're trying to burden them or disturb them or say, oh, do this or don't do that or don't do this or something like that. Of course, they are still human beings just like us. They also want to have a very good life and all, which is also very possible. It is not a death sentence. If anyone has, it's not a death sentence, something that can be managed.
Death sentence, yeah.
Yes, so something that can be managed adequately just by ensuring that you avoid certain things and then you stick to certain things. Regular clinics, take your drugs regularly every day, as the case may be. So, which is very, very key. And I also want to appreciate Dr. Grace for this community and for the awareness and advocacy, which is very, very important. And I appreciate everyone that joined on this call. I hope we are able to use this information to better our communities. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. So please, we hope that you can use artificial intelligence to help us, deliver better healthcare for people living with sickle cell.
Absolutely. I mean, we should work towards
So
that.
let that be like a research interest for you going forward. Don't
right.
forget sickle cell. All right, everyone that joined and are still staying tuned now, thank you so much for participating. The link to the recording will be put out online so you can access the recording. And then any other time that Dr. Oluwabamise gives us time, we'll have him on the live Facebook feed. Until then, have a very beautiful evening, everyone. Bye.